Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. I have to say, it feels really nice to be back in front of the camera and to be in my car, kind of doing the thing. It has been way too long since I've last done a video. To me, that feels like I've opened up a tab in my head. Like you open up a tab on your Internet Explorer. We go about our days intending to do things, and that tab ends up kind of remaining open in the background. And it's kind of taking away just a little bit of your energy every single day. And I think it's time that I close the tab. It's time that I sit down, do one of these videos, and just do the damn thing. Okay. So, what has been happening? Well, a lot. Um, I resigned from my dream job. My last day was October 17th, 2025. I had it in my mind that I would stay at that job for 5 years, get the experience, and then head out. And I left a lot sooner than I really thought I was going to. I have been reporting to HR consistently about some misconduct from my supervisor, and I did like a whole spiel about it in like one of my first YouTube videos about, kind of the power of your voice, advocating, speaking up and saying something. And sometimes doing that may upset some people, and especially people that have power. And not the best outcomes come from that, hence why I resigned. So yes, I resigned. I spoke up, I documented, I reported, and unfortunately, I was kind of at a disadvantage. I've only been there 2 years. My supervisor has been there for going on 40 years. Obviously, there's tenure there, there's seniority, and being the organization that it is, there's a legacy to protect, and human resources is there to serve as a transcendental function to bring two sides together and synthesize a balance and a unity that, kind of goes beyond just the two opposing sides, right? But at the end of the day, human resources is also there to protect the employer from litigation, okay? And I have reported my supervisor multiple times trying to figure out what is going on, and I gave HR the benefit of the doubt. Unfortunately, I did have to talk to the CEO about some of the misconduct that was going on and kind of give him like an update as to all the things. And that's when I was like, hey, we can solve this, or I can go to the EEOC. I don't think they really appreciated that. A couple weeks later, I was put on a performance improvement plan. And part of my performance improvement plan was actually being overseen by the same supervisor that I reported misconduct to, or by. And it was kind of funny because it was like, here I am reporting what's been going on. This is a protected activity, and yet I'm being retaliated against. I'm the one being put on a performance improvement plan. And not only that, but part of my improvement plan is being overseen by the same supervisor that I'm experiencing misconduct from. Because now I'm being graded on, not, I should say graded, but now I'm being reviewed on things that are subjective, like attitude. Essentially, I have to be kind of like super polite with my supervisor now, as if I'm the one that was instigating and causing arguments. I wasn't the one disparaging her. I wasn't the one demeaning her character. I wasn't outright calling her stupid like she did to me. I wasn't saying racist remarks to her like she was to me. It was insane. I complied with the performance improvement plan as much as I could until I was like, you know what? This is not this is not right. I was isolated from my coworker. I wasn't allowed to work with her on tasks anymore. Tasks that we were initially allowed to do, like throughout the entire history of me working there, tasks were always shared. Now I'm being isolated from my coworker and I can't do certain tasks with her. So it just got to a point where it was like, you know what? This isn't going to work out in my favor. Even if I work on the performance improvement plan and I adhere to it, there's gonna come a day where they've manufactured enough where they're just gonna be like, all right, it's time for you to go. You know, I've done all I can. I've exhausted all of my options. And they're gonna do their own process to protect themselves. And unfortunately, I have to do mine. And that is resigning and resigning on my own terms, leaving on my own terms. And in the resignation letter that I submitted on Friday, I was like, hey, this is constructive discharge and retaliation. And this is what's been going on. This is exactly what's culminated in me finally saying enough is enough. I'm leaving. So I submitted my resignation letter on Friday, and that was that. And since then, I've really been thinking about like, okay, what is it that I really want? Like, what is a dream job? Like, what are the pitfalls of identifying myself, my character, my identity, who I am to a title, to this idea of a role that I'm supposed to play? I guess, like, what I'm trying to get at in a way is the idea that we grow up being asked what it is that we want to be when we grow up. And it plants a seed in our mind that we plan our lives according to one specific role, one thing that we really want to be. I think there is utility in that, but then at the same time, I guess my caution is don't base your identity in a title, in a job position, in a role, I think as a human being, we can have a life mission, but we should be wary of the life mission consuming all that we are. And so how does that look like to me, right? Because like I can talk about these ideas in a very abstract way, in a very high level manner, but not everyone may understand what it is I'm trying to get at. So let's scale down and let's just focus on kind of my experience, right? And perhaps that will help paint a picture. The way I kind of understand that idea is that I thought that being an event stylist was going to be like the end all be all, that, I'd be able to decorate, that I'd be able to set up venues and network with people and kind of just create environments that were memorable to people and that facilitated connection. And I really put in a lot of hard work to kind of fulfill that mission, to complete those tasks. So much work that I based my identity, my self-worth on that position, on that title, on the things that I was able to accomplish. In a way, it did bolster my self-worth and my identity, but it kind of became a trap because I ended up basing my worth on other people's perception, on other people's praise, acknowledgement that what I was doing was indeed good work. And that's the first pitfall, Your worth isn't based on what other people think of you. It's nice if people think of you in a positive manner, but we should be aware that if someone perceives us negatively, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. That somehow the way they view you is like factual. It's not factual. And you have to be kind of wary of negative perception because you kind of have to pick apart where it's coming from. Is it jealousy? Is it fear? Is it their own insecurity? With negative perception, you have to be a little bit more careful. Whereas with positive perception, you don't have to dissect it as much because it comes from a genuine place. People aren't going to praise you unless they genuinely feel like you're doing something worth of praise, right? Like there's only so much hate that an individual can receive, before it gets really hard to just kind of let it roll off your back. Before, you can't behave like the hate is just not sticking to you. And I just didn't understand. I'm like, I'm having honest, genuine conversations with you one on one. Sometimes it be with the team member and I talking to my supervisor, like, hey, some of these things we are concerned about as a team, what's going on? And unfortunately, blame would be shifted, there'd be deflection and defensiveness. And it wasn't, we weren't trying to disparage the supervisor. We were just trying to gain understanding as to what was going on with like the dynamic. And nothing worked. Nothing worked. And I started to feel like I was failing. I started to feel like what the work I was putting forth wasn't enough. It was inadequate, that it was mediocre, which was really unfortunate because other people in different departments, even within the same departments, leadership that was above her even would acknowledge the good work that we were putting in. It was just one person, my supervisor, that was, for lack of a better word, a bully, you know? And it sucked. It really sucked because I really tried to put my best foot forward, to focus on my response to everything that was going on. The point is, the point is, don't don't rely on your job title to give you your value. You are so much more than the position that you are in. You are so much more than the title that you hold. You are so much more than your job. So much more. Your job doesn't define you. Your title doesn't define you. You can have it for 40 fucking years. Your title doesn't define you. Because guess what? Eventually, you're going to have to relinquish the title. And it's going to be passed on to someone else. And then what's going to happen? Is your personality going to crumble? Is your character going to crumble? Is is your value going to crumble just because you have to relinquish a title? Just because you no longer even have the title? It's just kind of like a title is just a title. That's it. It can give you an ego boost, but that doesn't define your worth. It doesn't define who you are as a human being, and it definitely doesn't define your character. There's a lot of people who have really nice, prominent, impressive titles that are pieces of shit. That are pieces of shit, you know? And so, like, what would you rather have? Someone with outstanding character or someone that has a really pretty title that you can flex and flaunt? So that's what kind of got me to resign. I'm like, you know what? I love what I do and I love the title because whenever I speak to someone, it seems kind of like cool. It seems very kind of corporate. But after the discussion, that once I go home, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's a cool title, but God, am I miserable? Like, God, is it a pain in the ass? Oh my gosh. And so I think what this kind of leads me to is this idea of like success. Like, what is success? And success is so subjective and personal. And I feel like this isn't something new, right? I think eventually people end up waking up to this idea or the idea gets introduced to them. I know for me, I was introduced to this idea back when I was in high school, listening to Alan Watts and Terrace McKenna, Ram Dass. Um, Kind of like, success is a sort of idea that gets thrown around, and it's there's a cultural acceptance to it. There's a cultural standard to it, right? And the idea of success, especially when you're thinking about like society, what society thinks is success, we can refer to the American dream. Um, like that's our standard of success, having a house, having a job that pays for all the things, allows us vacation time, allows us to support a family, and allows us to buy all of the shiny little trinkets, the cars, the boats, the vacations, the house, the nifty appliances, having a big ass bank account, having all the clothes and the jewelry. You get it. You get it. Um, It's a very sort of Western idea of success. It's heavily based in consumerism. And it leads me to like revisit this idea of like, okay, like what do I really view as success? Because like sure, I had the corporate 9 to 5. I had the benefits, I had paid time off. I had flex time for like 6 days. Um and I had holidays off, Cool. Made up for a decent pay, even though like people over here working at a gas station was making more than me, just to be honest. And it was nice. It was, I kind of felt like I made it, right? I got to this point where I was like successful, you know, based on sort of like the corporate idea, their American dream, But I didn't really feel successful. I didn't have peace of mind because financially speaking, I wasn't free. Like I was just able to pay the bills and like that was it, I didn't feel successful. I always felt like pinched and honestly a little trapped. Like the incentives, the benefits were just good enough that it kept me there. That kept me from looking outside and trying to find something better until things happened and I was kind of pushed out, And I gotta say, I'm really relieved. I am really relieved because it has pushed me to think about what is success to me. And success to me is peace of mind, financial freedom, the freedom to pursue creative endeavors that are ultimately fulfilling to me. Because even while I was working at my dream job, I kept thinking about YouTube. I kept thinking about my clothing line. I kept thinking about the fact that I'm like, I made this LLC back in 2020 and I haven't done jack shit to really put it to work. And it haunts me. And it's like what an open tab that's running in the back of my mind that I haven't been able to close quite yet. And it's honestly, I keep coming back to it. And if I keep coming back to it, then it has to be the thing that I really want to do. I am so fulfilled by being a light, even if it's just to like one person, just the idea that I can just share my story and people resonate with that is fulfilling to me. It really is. And it beats making any sort of floral arrangement. It beats, decorating trees. It beats event styling, like even though that was fulfilling, it's also very temporary. But if I'm able to share my story and make an impact with someone, and that impact is a nudge for someone else to embark on something new and novel, that lives on far longer than any sort of floral arrangement ever would. I'm honestly thankful. Like, I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret reporting things to HR. I don't regret advocating. Was it hard? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it taught me so much. It taught me so much about myself that I truly do have courage and bravery that I had no idea that I even had. I kind of discovered it through this entire process that, you know, I am stronger than I believe I am. And that goes for a lot of people. That goes for everyone. And that's what makes people so valiant, that despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite the anxiety, despite the doubts, we're able to steel our resolve and move forward anyway. And it's like in the face of adversity, we're able to rise. That's how success ends up being cemented, by the persistence to overcome that sort of adversity through valiant behavior. And so that's what's been going on my mind lately. That's what I've been thinking about. That's what's been going on. Um and yeah, thank you guys for listening. It's been a real delight getting back out here. I'm gonna talk to you guys later. Bye.